Not your average tabletop. Woohoo!
Welcome to Not Traverse Tabletop. I'm Zach,
And I'm Pepper.
and today we're doing a video on 10 new to us games we played this weekend.
Yeah.
And all these games happen to be on Board Game Arena, so we learned all digital versions of these games. We did not actually learn any new ones on the actual tabletop, unfortunately.
No. So they are Don't Mind down at the bottom here, Alhambra and Nanga Parbat. Although we did learn that one newly somewhat recently, and I think we mentioned it in one of our Take My Money videos. So go watch all that series to find out which one it is. Start at the beginning and work your way to the end.
Yes,
But yeah, it's
exactly.
actually the other 10 of here, which we played them from Terra Nova all the way to Micro Midgard. We are going to be providing little mini reviews or first impressions
Yeah,
of them and our entire weekend of gaming, pretty much.
yes. So we'll start, I think, with Terra Nova, because that was
Yes.
the first one we played. So this was the first one we actually played in the Terra Mystica kind of world, or whatever you want to call it,
Yes.
series of games. I've definitely been interested in these ones. They're definitely considered more of the Euro style, strategy style games, and those tend to be ones that I like quite a bit. So I've kind of been wanting to mostly, probably the one I've been wanting to play most is Terra Mystica, but this one was one they came out with, I think this year, last year, a couple years ago, pretty recently, and it's kind of more of a, at least from what I've heard. So this is why we went with this one first, is that it's a little kind of more approachable
This is
version
why
of the
I
game.
forced us to play this one first.
Right. So, yeah, I got a chance to finally get into this world, uh, and I thought it was pretty good. It had some interesting pieces to it that I didn't initially see it having, where the kind of interactions between players actually were decently meaningful. We played all of these two players, so take that and note that, because some of these might this is the first time we've played them. Some might play better with better or higher player count, but we played them all at two players. And
Yes.
this one, it would be probably just from that play. I would think maybe three players might be the sweet spot.
Yeah, I think so because you do benefit and help others by placing next to their settlements. So just having more people out there would be helpful. And there are a couple variants for two-player. I don't believe we played with either of those. I think there was maybe a turn order, possibly variant in there, as well as putting some neutral buildings out, which would have helped slightly, I think,
Yeah,
for at least the secondary building and its little three
paying
coin
cost.
discount. But other than that, I think that would just restrict where you could go.
Yeah, I would agree.
But I liked it.
Um,
I really liked the system and kind of the power and powering it up. It wasn't overly complicated. I don't know of how much that system changes in the other versions
oh
uh,
yeah,
with that specifically, and um, terraforming the spots on the board to your preferred, and it kind of has on the player
like a
boards.
wheel of
Yeah, wheel. So you maybe like the swamp and something. The ones adjacent to the swamp are the sand and the lakes. So those just take 1 point to terraform them, and the other two terrain types would take additional ones to terraform them to your preferred terrain. And that was kind of cool because you do actually have to change the terrain type to be able to build there. I don't know if I've seen that in a game.
yeah. I don't think I have either, and that was pretty cool because I did not. From all the times I've seen like the board state of Terra Mystica, like people posting on Instagram and stuff about liking the game and stuff, I did not realize. I don't think that because maybe I just see it when there's not like as many pieces out there, and maybe it is played differently. Let us know in the comments below if you've played them both, if it is a pretty big shift at all. But I did not realize you were terraforming, changing terrain to a specific type for yourself. So yeah, that was pretty cool. That was probably the most interesting piece to it for me. And I think the only initial kind of possible negative that, and with more plays, I might feel differently about it. But is like the scoring in this? It seems it's not that it's bad scoring. It's just that you get to a point, and it's probably based on your own choices. So I can't blame anyone but myself. But there are very limited ways to score. It seemed like.
Yeah, they have one tile flipped each round, which gives you points for pretty much building a type of building. A few of them are, so building this type of building gives you 2 points this round. And we ended up with some duplicates in our game, and I like that scoring, and that's satisfying and fun.
Mm-hmm.
But end of game points was just pretty much the largest connected group of spaces. Is first place, second place get different amounts of points, and that's all. So it's mostly during game points that really matter, and I do wish there was a little more at the end. That is my probably only big negative as well, but I like the game. Otherwise, I'd probably first impression, I'm going to give it a number. I'd give this an 8.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking probably around a 7.5 for me. Maybe I had a little higher expectations, but I could see this one potentially going up with more plays, but I am interested in seeing what Terra Mystica does if that adds those additional things. And then eventually Gaia Project.
Yes, eventually, a few years down. And then here's one that you were equally excited to play. DVONN, game in the GIF series of games. As you can tell, it's a very thematic game. Now, this is pure abstract goodness with cookies and cream pieces on those boards, which you don't actually get to really see in person, but they actually look pretty nice on the Board Game Arena site as well.
Mhm.
And this one, one player is the white pieces, one player is the black pieces, and you move in a straight line the amount of pieces that is in the stack. So whatever's at the top of the stack controls it. Start off just one tile, one movement. You move and you land on top of another piece. Now that's a 2 stack. That'll move 2 spaces, and then 3 spaces, 4 spaces, and so on. You can steal stacks from other players. And one thing to be very wary of is these red tiles, because if you cannot make a path of tokens to connect pieces to a red tile, then those pieces get taken off the board. They're out of the game. So it can get a little cutthroat, and you're weighing options of, okay, I could cut this area off. I'm losing some of my pieces, but I think maybe Zach's set up to do more over there. So I think it's worth it. I'm just going to sacrifice sometimes huge chunks of the board.
Right.
Which is crazy. And you can take control of those red pieces. As you can see, it's stacked on top of here. So then you're actually moving the goalpost.
Right.
Really changing. I like this. I like these types of games more than you. I'm hoping that they get more of the GIF series of games onto Board Game Arena, because I enjoyed my play.
No, yeah. I definitely didn't mind this one, but yeah, these types of games just aren't necessarily my style, but I would play this one again. It was enjoyable enough, and I would hope I could do maybe a little bit better. I got creamed pretty badly, I think. I think there are a couple of things that I don't think I fully understood, like when you do move the stack. I mean, right away it was just initially didn't really matter as much because it was pretty early on in the game. But so I feel like I've played so many games where you like drop one off as you go, like in each spot. You just take the whole stack and put it 2 spaces. You don't drop one, drop another. So that is something that feels a little bit different. That you're doing the whole stack, to me at least. I guess I can't think of another game like that. I'm sure there are some. But then also when you are moving that, if you can move something like 3 spaces, it's not like you just have to move it. You can move it to a spot where it's still connected back to the red, but it has to be able to actually land on something else.
Yes.
You can't just be moving it to an open space. So that can be very important as well in part of your strategy. And I think that was one of the things later in the game, last half of the game, where I thought, oh, I'm going to do this and it'll still be connected back to the red. But then I realized, oh, wait, no, it has to actually go on top of something else. So, yeah, I think this one for me, maybe like a 6.5. I'd play it again, but it's It is what it is for me. It's about what I expected.
Yeah, I'd give this an 8 to maybe 8.5. It's just a little more suited to what I like. Uh,
Mhm.
and it was a really fun, satisfying gameplay for me. It did not end up as well for you
You did
near
pretty
the
good.
end. Near the end, you had a couple
Started
bad
getting,
things happen.
yeah, it probably made a few bad plays there. That was on me.
Then Taluva, which is another kind of abstract game, which
It
let's
is.
see, let's get a picture. Got a 3D landscape that you're building here, and you
More
play,
stack.
yes, stacks on stacks on stacks. And these you are trying to get. Oh my goodness, they have a little spider there crawling around. It's terrifying. At least you don't have that on board game Arena.
Exactly.
But yeah, so you play a tile and then you play buildings out. And the buildings, as the game goes along, don't actually have to be on the tile that you just placed. I often forgot that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so then you're trying to either when the tiles run out have the most points, and they're crazy amounts of points for the types of buildings. You have your little huts down on the bottom here, and then you have towers and temples. I think the temples are worth like 1,000 points. The towers are worth 100 points, and the huts are just worth a point apiece. So if the tiles run out, you got your temples out, you're probably going to win the game. But the goal is to get rid of two of your types of structures. So maybe all of your huts and all two of your temples. There's like 20 huts and two of each of the others. The way
Hmm.
you do that is you have to add on to your group. So I think a temple can go into a group of at least three existing huts or structures in
Three
the group.
spaces.
Yeah, three spaces. And then the temple or the tower has to go onto a third level, a third tier of terrain. Then there's a terrain rule where if you add to one, then you place a hut onto a terrain, like a sand or something, then you also place huts on all the sand touching the group that you just added to. So that is a way to significantly place out all of your buildings of that type. I like that rule
Hmm. Yeah,
a lot.
that was a cool little thing, but I didn't feel like I didn't fully understand when it triggered sometimes. And I think
True.
that was kind of the main thing with this one for me, is that some of just a couple rules that I maybe just didn't fully ever grasp or understand. Because also, like, you can't. So when you're stacking, you're placing on a volcano space on top of another volcano space,
Oh, yeah.
and it has to be on more than one tile to stack up, which is typical of games. But then also, you can't cover up something that completely eliminates a whatever they were called, a group,
Oh, yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
So if you completely eliminate a group, if you would completely eliminate a group, you would not be able to place there either. So there were just some of these little rules that I'm sure if I played it more, I would get a better feel for and maybe enjoy it a little bit better. But overall, for what I was hoping to get from this one, I don't feel like I got it. And this one for me is probably first impression like a 5. I think it's spoiler going forward. Probably the one I would least want to come back to out of the ones we played. But I could see people liking it. I think maybe if I understood the rules a little bit better, it would have been a slightly better experience. But still, I feel like we have. It just makes me think of like Cusco and stuff, and I just
Oh, yeah.
definitely prefer that one over this. So it's
Yeah.
hard to overlook some things that I don't know, didn't love about this one. Maybe.
Yeah, I feel like it's very simple, but also a lot of little rules. And if we knew it better, I think that would have gone a little better. I'm probably going to give this maybe a 6 on first impression. I think part of that is just maybe not giving the most attention to learning the game. So being in situations where why can't I place this tile here, or and then why can I now? So a little
Mhm.
bit on me personally
That's
from
true.
my experience, but still I was very excited because it looked very beautiful and was
Yeah.
right off that banger of DVONN. So it's a slight disappointment after that, but still a 6. I think I had a good time.
Yeah.
And on to expeditions around the world from designer Wolfgang Kramer. Oh my
Ooh.
goodness. Pretty prestigious designer.
Yeah,
This one,
I think we kind of had a feeling that this one was going to be. Why do these look a little different than the board game arena implementation?
it
But
must be a new edition.
no, yeah, and yeah, this is an interesting one. It's probably one of the lighter feeling ones that we played, or most like simple, family friendly type style of games that we played. I think this one could be kind of like a Ticket to Ride or Catan style game if you had it for your family. It felt like where you are, you can see all those locations out on the map. There are different dots.
Yep.
So there's kind of red dots, blue dots, green dots, and the green dots are the locations where you could get these tickets or places that you have to visit on
Yep.
your one of your journeys.
Oh
And the
Valier.
Oh boy. The blue spaces allow you to kind of move a second time. So typically on an action, you will be moving one of the three red, yellow, or blue expeditions one way or another with those arrows kind of pointing off, going along one of the lines. And so you'll go out from one location to the next. If you land on a location of a card that you have or that is a public goal, you will kind of essentially score a point, and you're trying to get rid of your entire hand of cards to end the game. So you're trying to get as many of those done as you can. So you're maybe trying to move the arrows towards a certain location sometimes just because it's like, well, I've got like 3 of them over here that I got to do. So move it this way versus letting, my opponents move it another way. And also, if your opponent moves it onto your space, you kind of just maybe luck into that. Kind of makes me think of code names a little bit where you accidentally, you're like, oh, it could be that word or that word. Oh, let's go with that one. Oh, shoot, that was the opponent's. So we just gave him a free point there. So that can happen here. But yeah, I think overall, I liked the way this worked. It was interesting with some of the bonuses where you can use these tickets to do a few special actions where you can kind of go one more space on a track. Right. It doesn't have to be the same one you moved. You could just do another movement, or you could use a ticket to kind of take one of those arrows off so that you can maybe hope to move it in another direction. Or you can use a ticket, which I don't think I did, to switch out a card for a different card.
Yep.
Maybe that you could get to a little bit better.
Yeah.
But those were a little interesting because if you went back into a red or blue space, which are the kind of the two bonus circles, where you get to move another turn if you do the blue, or the red gives you another ticket. Found that a little strange, but at the same time, as I thought about it more, I think it works. I like it because it's just a simple game, so I feel like it works for this style of game.
Yeah.
But it is kind of a weird, interesting thing where you go backtrack to that and you get that bonus still.
Yes. Yeah. That has me interested. I'm like, if there was any game with tracks where you can go up and gain the benefits and go back and get the benefits again, you just usually don't get those benefits again.
No, you don't.
So I like that. That needs to be in more games. Good job, Expeditions.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It's fun to get big turns and chain together the bonus spaces with your tickets in the blue spaces, and possibly claim some neutral cards as well as maybe a couple of your own. There's a little bit of sneakiness so you can be in there. If you circle back on a route, on a track, then you can pretty much close it
Branch
off
out from anywhere.
branch out from anywhere previously. So if you're like, oh, dang, we passed that place that I needed to go to, maybe later down the line you can actually get there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that as well. But yeah, I think just kind of first impression, initial thoughts on it. I'd probably give this one like a 7.75. I like this one quite a bit.
Yeah.
It is definitely simple. There's a little bit of luck to which cards you're getting and which way they're going. There is that. I think for the style and weight of the game, I like how it worked.
Yeah,
I don't know that this one would go much higher than that for me, but probably likely be slowly going down. But
yeah, I like it.
Okay.
I probably give it a 7.5, maybe. Just initially, I was thinking that this is like, oh, just another game with a map or whatever, going to be a knockoff, as Wolfgang Kramer is known to do, just knock off other games. Definitely hasn't
Exactly.
made any great ones on his own. But yeah, it ended up being pretty good.
Mm.
Oh boy. Sobek, 2
Sobek,
players.
2 players. And
Speaking
we
of
have not played the original
we have
Sobek.
not.
And you can see here now a couple of these have been 2-player only. So that is probably the ideal player count for those ones at least.
Yes.
But yeah, we have not played the original. But this one we've got Mr. Bruno Catala,
Mr. Bocatella and what is it? Sebastian.
Sebastian,
Obviously. Sebastian. That's what we call him.
his buddy.
Good buddy, Sebastian. But yeah, this one you can explain. You got there
this one
first.
kind of made me think a little bit of. At first, I didn't know what it was gonna feel like, but especially by the time we were done with it, it made me feel a little bit like King Domino-ish, or kind of in that world.
The
So it makes me
scoring.
wonder.
The scoring
The
is
scoring, at least. The
Yes.
scoring, yes, that's true. Not the gameplay necessarily, but the scoring, yes, that's the part that, like, you're trying to get sets of the different color things, and then there's kind of these little scarabs, which are essentially the crowns from his
Yes.
King Domino series of games.
Yeah.
And yeah, you've got the different symbols there, but how the game works is you've got this Ankh token. Well, initially someone will pick one of the 4 middle squares and draft one of those tiles into their hand, and then you've got this token here. And each of the tokens you can see kind of have some darker areas on them.
Yep. So those fish, like that kind of that dark area on the top and bottom. So if
I
you
took that.
chose that one, then the Ankh would then be pointing in those 2 directions, determining the row or column or diagonal that the next player has as options to choose tiles from.
Yep. And if there's nothing in those directions, then the board gets refilled, kind of like Splendor Duel, if you've played that one. Where, just, well, similar to that. I guess not quite like that. That one goes around in a circle. But, yeah, so you're just drafting these tiles, and then you're kind of collecting. One of the actions you can do is collect kind of a set instead of taking a tile. So you have to turn in like this. You'd have to turn in 3 of the same kind.
3 or more.
Yep, 3 or more, and then be able to kind of have them in your tableau of point scoring at the end of the game. So you'd kind of be banking them, I think, is what I'd call it.
Yes, yeah, banking them so they'd be locked down, and then when you do that, you also do get little bonus tokens when you sell a set. Or there's 5 out at the beginning, and additional ones after the 5 will not get anything, but those first ones will get bonuses that give you effects. They also have characters that give you different effects. Some of those can be negative effects for an opponent, like these little dashes, or your opponent discards down to 6 cards or 6 tiles that they've claimed, and interesting. And the other ones go to their corruption. Interesting thing with the corruption is, so like we said, it determines the row or column that you can choose from in the order here on the board. Any tiles that you skip over, so if for some reason, so it's pointing in the diagonal here, for some reason of these orange characters, you wanted the second random character and skipped over this first one, that first one would go into your corruption pile, which you get a various amount of points or tokens at the end based on how much better you did, how much fewer corruption you have than your opponent. So that is something to be wary of. There are some ways to manage it and remove your corruption, but
not for sure.
Not for sure, definitely. So you do have to be wary if you got a really good one down maybe at the corner, you gain like 2 or 3 corruption. Really makes you weigh it.
That's true. Because I think that was, I had you teach me this one a little bit, and that was one of the things. Because at first I did not realize that until I took my first turn, that it's the whole row, whatever it's pointing to. You can take any of those, which is also a little. I think that's the kind of unique thing of this one. I don't know that I usually see that. It's usually just pick one, the next open one, or next one that's not open or something. pick out of those two that it's pointing to or something. So I do like that you can kind of just, if those next two aren't good, you just go all the way to the end, but then you're taking corruption to take it. I do like that fact as well. A little bit different than I'd normally seen in games. But yeah, I like this one quite a bit. I'd probably give this one like an 8 or 8.5 off the first play.
Mhm.
Probably closer to 8.5, at least an 8.25.
Oh,
It was pretty good. I want to play this one probably some more. I don't know if it overtakes like just the simplicity of King Domino, even though it is different. It is a different game. But yeah, there's
it's
just those couple of like potential take thatty type things. It's just like I don't know that I really needed that in this game, but I do get why it's there because otherwise you could just bloat your hand up and whatever. But
and I mean,
could
as
be
you get to
unfortunate if-
know the game more and play it more, then you're just going to be aware of those things.
That's true.
It will affect how you play. I think this is another classic Bruno Catala game. I don't know, gives me feels of those like Targi or, like you said, Splendor Duel, where you kind of have this board and kind of tricky ways of drafting, along with the great multiplication is pretty much what it is, but we call it King Domino scoring. So I'd give this a 9. I'm gonna give it a 9 to start off. I really liked it.
Fair.
It looks really nice as well. I assume in person it is very beautiful and maybe even with a nice little wooden chunky piece as well. So this delivered for me. And then
it's one of them that I'm most looking forward to playing again. So this one I think could go up higher for me.
It's got the Catala seal of cleverness for sure. And then the filler Walker Harding is added again with another very approachable, lightweight, quick game to fill in the time. And that is Cacao. This one I looked at years ago. I just never got around to it. And finally did as we were playing all these games. And I mean, this is just right up his alley of approachable games. You place a tile out there and activate things around it, kind of, is how you do it. So each player has, I think, an identical set, shuffled, but an identical set of these tiles here. Let's zoom in. I had zoomed in quite a bit. And as you can see, like this purple tile that is a player's tile, and the things on the edges are little meeples, and they activate the action spaces on those sides the amount of times as meeples there are there. So I think there's 4 meeples on every tile. It just is variable as to what sides they are. As you can see, this white one has 3 times going to one side and 1 to another. That reminds me of Glenmore 2, or Glenmore, where you're placing these tiles and activating everything around it. I love that in Glenmore, and I really enjoy it here as well.
I agree. This one, it's a little simpler way of doing it. It's much more easy to see what's happening. And yeah, those activate right away if there are tiles in that location already, or it will activate later if you were to add a tile there in the tiles.
So if someone adds,
doesn't have to be you if anyone adds one.
Yes. It's very nice, and it fills in. So you're just placing your people tiles out there, and then if there's ever an empty space with 2 people tiles adjacent to it, you automatically get to choose one from the market of action tiles to fill it in. So it's not a slow build; it goes very quickly.
Yeah, this would probably be the second one, maybe after Expeditions, and maybe it could even go before Expeditions, of being kind of that family style game of very approachable, quick, Catan like, Carcassonne like, maybe some of the intro type games. Yeah, this was one that I feel like I've seen it. I guess I'd never looked into how it was played, but yeah, when I started to look at, or when I started saying how it was played, I can't remember, did I look at a thing on this one? Whichever way we learned this, I was like, oh, this is sounding like this could be pretty solid, and I like this one quite a bit as well. I think it probably could vary on how those tiles come out, because in our game specifically, so one of the bigger ways of getting some points are getting some cacao and selling it. So the most you can hold at once is 5, and then there's kind of some market tiles that come out, and you can sell them depending on how many meeples there are. You can sell that many for that many coins a piece, or
Yes.
points a piece. And in our game, it seemed like all the market ones came out very, very late, so there wasn't really I don't know. I don't know how to say it. It
Yeah,
wasn't really like you were able to get some cacao and immediately go to a market and
yeah,
kind of go back and forth. You just kind of were sitting there waiting
yeah.
to take.
It felt kind of weird. Because yeah, it was just like 4 markets right next to each other at the end. But it was cool. I like that, and it has a couple really nice, clever mechanisms in there. I think I'm going to give this an 8.
Okay. I think I'll probably give this one 7.25, but it is very quick and snappy, so this one I'll probably play more often, so it has a chance of going up, but at the same time, I'm curious how it will feel from play to play. I'm not 100% sure. Not saying it'll feel
Yeah.
bad. Maybe it'll be better and better once I know kind of the distribution of tiles that are going to come out.
Yeah, yeah. On to Puerto Rico. One of the top games on Board Game Geek. Where is it rated? Is this the official? Is this the one that is highly rated?
I think so.
I don't
Thought
see
the
it.
rating was right there. I don't know why it is not showing here. Thought it usually
Interesting.
shows somewhere in here, but yeah.
I believe
This one
it
is
could be
pretty
another
highly.
one. We played the wrong Puerto Rico, maybe.
I'm pretty sure this one's pretty highly rated. It's got a good score there. Uh, but yeah, that one. I I think the main reason we wanted to play this, I mean, outside of I think it's a Euro game, so I probably wanted to play it even more than
Yeah,
you did.
yeah,
So I was excited for it. And but there's a Game Found project coming out, and Awakened Realms is I don't know if they're working with the same team or a different team, but they're bringing back a new version of Puerto Rico, and it just makes me think of this Castles of Burgundy Deluxe Edition that we got. That was like one of ours and Michaela's one of our top games of last year. Great production. So I'm like, oh, maybe if we love this game, we can get this one too, because I know they did a really great job with that.
yeah,
And yeah, so we had to try it out, and we played at 2 players, which, as you could see from that first page, they suggested or kind of the highest rated was like playing at 4, best at 4, and the 2 actually has about a 38%, it
yeah,
looks like, votes that are saying not the recommended, but can still
yeah,
play it because it's still 45. Recommended is the one has more, so
yeah.
more people are saying recommend versus not at 2. But I would be interested in seeing how it plays differently at 3 or 4 because I did like 2 because you just kind of kept going back and forth with picking the actions.
Yep, yep.
So there's like was it 7 actions? Or 8? 8
Yeah,
actions.
so, oh, yep.
And then you're taking those actions to do slightly different things, and it's one of those where everyone gets to benefit from it, but
Yep.
then the person that activated it usually gets a little better benefit. I really like that in games, and I think it works in this one pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't think it's some good stuff, but none of them felt like, oh my gosh, if you take that one, that's really, really extra powerful. So I think
Yeah.
that was a good balance of not feeling like, oh, you got to take that one first every time because your extra benefit is really, really good. It's just kind of more
Yeah.
circumstantial of
It's
what's going
much,
on.
yeah, it's much more important just the order and the timing of things for certain players, possibly with their goods maybe not being able to produce much or being maxed out or not having anything to sell is much more important than just a little bonus that they get. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, I like the production that they have in this. You can get the goods out into your farms or whatever, and then get the buildings here. It's very simple. You have to activate them with the workers. I didn't think that we were ever really short on being able to activate things,
No,
um, which maybe felt too easy or easier than I thought it would. I'm happy with it, but it never really felt like we were short on those.
no. That's
Um,
just it. Like this board here that it's showing has like a bunch of open spots, and
yeah,
I don't know if maybe in the higher player count you do have that, but
no,
or maybe we weren't buying buildings quick enough or
I
something.
guess I did have a
You're,
good tile that filled these ones immediately in my farm, so
oh,
that did
yeah.
help me quite a bit.
But yeah, I never struggled with it though either. And I had
Yeah,
a few buildings that had like 3 spots, the production buildings, and
Okay.
maybe I had like one area open, but I didn't really even need it because I only had so much in the field actually. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, that part was a little interesting. I wonder if at a higher player count, if it is kind of a similar amount, but I think it's based on the player count. So I think there would just be more coming out at once. So I
Yeah.
don't know, but overall, I did enjoy it. I was kind of hoping to enjoy it a little bit more, and I think maybe I'll try this one at 3 players. Maybe get
Yeah.
Taylor to play it with us and see if
Yeah.
it feels a little bit different at 3.
Yeah.
Differs, but as
Yeah.
of now, I'd probably give it like a 7. I'm not like against it, but I'd have to play it some more. Which, to be fair, I think the first time I played Castle of Burgundy, I did enjoy it. I probably enjoyed it the first play more than I enjoyed this first play. But at the
Uh,
same time, I wasn't like fully into Castle of Burgundy after the first play. But as I played it more and more, I actually grew to really, really love the game. So maybe it would be the similar thing with this.
yeah, I'd probably give it a 7.5. I think that's what I gave Expeditions. Probably about that level of enjoyment for me. It's got a couple good things. I like the kind of Mystic Veil kind of point pool that you are getting
Oh
throughout the
yeah,
game and kind of seeing that progress. Every time you sold goods, it felt, or delivered goods, not sold goods. Every time you delivered
two
goods
different.
to the ship, that felt satisfying getting a bunch of points, especially if we're able to fill a ship all by yourself. Um,
Hmm.
I'm
That was
guessing,
always awesome.
yeah, yeah. But selling goods, on the other hand, was not as fun. You have to sell unique types of goods, and the cart
Hmm.
has to be filled out with all the different types before it can be cleared. And we kind of we primarily went for just 2 types of goods, and
That
so
actually
we
made money
looked,
because there was also
yeah,
the corn does not
yeah,
make anything in that. So,
yeah,
but yeah, we went for 2 different types of goods, and then I think we both had some corn,
yeah.
but that didn't really sell for anything. So we were kind of stuck. Even if we
It's
once we
just
did sell the corn, we still needed to go. And eventually, I grew another type. I think you might have eventually as well, but yeah. So it took us a little bit before we actually had that reset.
yeah.
So
So
then it made coins very difficult to come by, which
yes,
are a big part of purchasing some of those better buildings. But it's also first time play, and those buildings did
yeah,
some cool things. So I could
yeah,
maybe see maybe we should have bought or prioritized some other buildings instead of what we ended up buying early on. I don't know. It just felt like get the production buildings; those look awesome, and then I'll be able to do all this stuff. But
yeah,
not really realizing how it actually fully worked until getting a little deeper into the game.
yeah.
But yeah,
On to another one that you were definitely looking more forward to than I was. We kind of did this the one day. It was a bunch of lighter, quick games, and then the second day was a little heavier, more complicated games. And they took about the same length, a little
yes,
longer for the heavier games, actually, even though it was only maybe like half the amount.
right. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because yeah, this is one that I feel like has been on sale at Miniature Market several times, and I've debated buying. You even thought I owned it. And when you kind of look at it, if you're looking at the board and stuff, it looks like maybe some other Euro style games. And yeah, I've always kind of had an interest in what this one would do, even though I had no clue how the game was played.
Yeah.
But yeah, then when on Board Game Arena, I think a lot of these had tutorials. So if you've never used Board Game Arena before, if you've made it this far in the video, you can use it for some of these games to kind of learn how they're played, or at least get a higher level overview. There's some things in it that you kind of just learn as you go type thing, but they overall do a pretty good job of teaching it. And yeah, going through this one, you've kind of got some simple actions that you're taking, but they're all like doing things on different parts of different boards. You've got kind of your own player board. You've got a map that you're visiting different places. You've got kind of this upper track where you get coins and stuff. I don't know what that's supposed to be. And then below that, you've got where these students are branching out into different studies. Is kind of I think what it's supposed to be saying. And
Mhm.
you just kind of go along these paths. a lot of those that kind of have the movement, that one that I just said, and the map one. There's kind of some bonuses that you're getting along the way, and when you stop on places, you might be getting some bonuses. But those movement works pretty simple. And then you've got your own player board, where you are keeping potentially some bonus icons, which are the symbols. You can see you've got some cards there with the orange book on the top and the little cog symbol. The bottom part is the action itself,
Yeah.
and the top might be some bonus that you get. And then also below that, you can see there is a tile that is giving, well, in this case, it's the one that you start with, I think. But it gives you kind of a bonus to that action because as you're taking these throughout the game, there's ways to get additional ones of those and get additional symbols. Depending on the power of the action, the number of those symbols you have of the card you played, you can take kind of various levels of the action. So, like the movement ones, you can move 3 spaces if you had 3 of those symbols, or if you're placing out on this right above where these actions are happening, you got kind of your bookshelf and you're trying to fill those in as like 3 different levels. So you might need level 3 to actually go to the bottom of that. Yeah, it's just a bunch of fun little things happening. I don't know that you can necessarily do a bunch of everything. You got to manage it pretty well, I think, to kind of um, not get kind of into something and get nothing out of it type thing. I don't know exactly how I'd say that, but yeah, overall, I think the core of the game and how the actions are triggered and stuff makes a lot of sense. And at the end of each round, a round is 5 actions. You can see there on the desk, there's 5 spots to place these cards down.
Okay.
And at the end of the round, you'll actually get rid of one of those cards.
Yeah.
I like to call it the lost knowledge in any game that does that, but I don't know well, it's not really lost knowledge. It's because you get to use it as a bonus from that point forward. So I guess it wouldn't necessarily be lost. It's just whatever, you're not using it anymore. You're learning from the past knowledge, maybe. So then you'll slide one of those cards underneath, and it'll count as an extra symbol as well. So your engine is building up. So your actions are just stronger and stronger each as the rounds go by, which is really cool feeling. You're able to do kind of more and more as the game goes on and get points in various ways. I've focused, I think, a little bit more on these bookshelves, and you focused on some other areas.
Focused on
being pretty close.
Yeah, I had some cards that I was very money focused. One of my cards, I could turn 3 coins in for 5 points, and I think I did that probably like every round. And so that was, what would that be, like 30 points?
I think so.
Which is a pretty big chunk of points. And
in this game.
So yeah, I was focused on that as well as kind of this student area and kind of getting to the end of those tracks and getting various end game scoring conditions. So 2 very different paths, and I believe it was within like 8 points or something. The game was so very close. I really enjoyed the card play as you're kind of deploying those, like in space base. That's the term that comes to my mind. Deploying those and getting rid of an action card of that type, but also powering up all of those actions in the future. So you can do it less times, potentially. You can get more cards, which is another action that you can take, which I like. But you're making it more powerful, and it usually is more useful to make it more powerful, and instead of just saving the individual actions, which will be just maybe 1 value or 2 value. I really like that. And what was the other one? Oh yeah, I had another card that also gave me points, which sacrificed cards in my hands. I had a weird kind of countdown because I'm going to be losing, if I play it right, 2 cards every round. So yeah, I don't know how many more cards there are in the deck. I hope there are more unique scoring cards, bonuses on those cards to really add variability. I don't know if I play it again and again. I probably might fall into the same things. I feel like these endgame scorings are very nice. And I feel like the other map is very hard to move.
Yeah, that one is definitely more hard to move around, and it there's some good benefits on it, but unless you're filling in the part below, or getting a lot of those cubes off to get those points for like placing those last 4 of them, it's not really a reason to do a bunch of movement on there. But I moved probably on there less than you did, and I filled in the book thing. I think if I had had a better plan, I didn't really have a good plan of how I was filling in the books. I maybe could have scored it just a little bit better because these are income, which I like that a lot. So you focus on, if I can actually get one filled in, I'm going to get this 2 points every end of round. So if you could get it in the first round, even if it was only 2 points in total, it'd be 12 points that you're going to get because you filled it in earlier versus if you fill something in late last round, you're only going to score it once. So it's kind of a cool way of trying to, can I get this done this round? Is it worth sacrificing maybe something else so that I can score it one extra time?
Yeah.
And yeah, the hard, whatever, the space mechanism you called it, that is in Path of Civilization, which is a new one I got that I like quite a bit. And it felt very, very similar to that, where you're getting rid of that card every round and having to add new cards. That one you get the cards for free. This one you do have to take an action to get the card. So, but yeah, I like this one. I'd probably put this at like a 7.5. But yeah, with repeated plays, I'd be interested to see what I would do because I feel like I'd either focus on the kind of library area again or focus on getting up those tracks like you did. Like those seem like probably the biggest ways of getting good chunks of points. And if you could somehow manage to get both of them, I don't know how. It's going to take you a lot of turns and whatever, just focusing on that. But maybe you could.
Yeah, I'd probably give this maybe an 8. I really love that card mechanism. Yeah, I'll go an 8. Forgetting exactly what I rated everything, so there's probably huge inconsistencies. That's the number that's coming to my mind.
Yeah, it's good. It's definitely a good one, and it's one of those simple actions, but a lot to think about.
Yes. And carrying on with that theme, maybe slightly less simple actions, although they are pretty simple once you understand them. But very much to think about is Anachrony. Number 50 on the overall ranking. This might be, I guess, we don't know what Puerto Rico. It's not even in the rankings, apparently.
Wow. Yeah, go back to that one. This is...
where is that? Over here. I'll look up another version.
How does that not have anything, though? It should have something.
Puerto Rico, let's go with 2002. Okay, 44.
Okay, so it's a little bit better, I guess, than Anachrony. A little bit
better than Anachrony, but Anachrony is better as a strategy game by 6.
That's how it works.
This one was tempting, especially with the Infinity Box, with all the deluxe components. And we've been tempted in the past and have somehow not gone in and paid hundreds and hundreds of dollars for all of these beautiful components. And I pat ourselves on the back for that. But once it was on Board Game Arena, I knew that inevitably we would be playing it. I would be playing this game. And
at some point.
You learned it a little bit, but said it'd probably be a learning game for sure. This first one that we played, and it was. And the first bit that we were going through it, I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good. I don't know if we're going to finish this. This is going to be chaos. But about a round or 2 into it, you kind of just know what you're doing. You still miss things, of course, and be like, oh, of course, that means that, or that means I'll have to do that, or I have to pay this instead. But you catch on pretty quickly.
Yeah, this one kind of like Newton has, like you said, once you get the thing, it's a simple worker placement game. You understand what's going or what's happening. You're just putting, there's like 3, 4, there's a 4th wild one, different types of workers that you're placing. And you can see there on the map, depending on what the action is, like some get extra benefits for going on areas. Some can't go on areas at all or take it at all. Like the science one can only be a scientist doing it. So it's um, you've got those kind of laid out on the board pretty nicely. I thought at first that would be pretty like, oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to remember that pretty very well, but there's such limited amount of actions here, and
Yeah, it
it
really
it
is.
makes a lot of sense as to how once you know what they do. I think it just makes a lot of sense how they actually flow into the game, work into the game. That it's like, oh yeah, that one, that's the scientist, that's the whatever. Because once you do it once, you remember that for the future rounds, and you're like, oh, if I have to do that, it's going to take that guy. Or like when you're building, the engineers kind of give you a discount, so you're always, at least in my head, maybe you were thinking differently, but I was always like, well, if I've got an engineer, that's the one that I want to use in that one.
Yep.
Makes the
Yep.
most sense. But yeah, I thought overall that was the gameplay itself was a lot simpler because I that was the big thing I was worried about. I was like, there's gonna be some heavy, lots of rules, and yeah, like you said, there's some things that takes a little bit of understanding, getting used to, and stuff. And since we did do it as more of just a kind of practice game, there were some things that we maybe didn't plan ahead on as much as we should have.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, if I wasn't feeling like I do not like super heavy crunchy games, very intimidating to me, and I'm like, okay, so is there a cost on this thing to build, and there's a cost on the board, and this and that, and it just worked. I mean, it helps because it is BGA, so things are highlighted if you
Right.
have access to build them. So I'm like, okay, I can build it. It's got a little ring around it. Just click it, it goes there, pays for it. So I think that is definitely this is a
That's true.
huge plus to learn it on VGA. Not only
Hmm.
for kind of you
I
going
agree.
through the tutorial a little bit, which is very helpful instead of having to read through a whole book, but also having to tell you you can or can't do something so you aren't making the mistakes that we have often made in the past for games we've taught ourselves.
Right. Um, but
But I
yeah,
do
so
so preference of the game. Um, I like this one quite a bit. It is a lot to think about and a lot to plan ahead about. And didn't even think of my evacuation until it was needed. And it got a struggle at the end, especially because your workers, you can kind of power up these suits, these top three. These will be your workers to go out on the board. You can do the top three for free. And then you can pay a pretty rare resource to do additional ones. But then once the meteor hits, two of the free ones you don't have access to anymore. Your special ability allowed you to still have access to them. And I
yes.
didn't have any of the resources, special resource to buy more at that time.
And I had a card that I could trigger, and it gave me two of them, so I could pretty much have five
You
guaranteed every time I wanted.
continued to have five of those. And then I went and I'm like, I'm struggling to even get a second worker for this round. And then it started to feel really tight, but I was able to do everything that I wanted to do. And I felt the game was satisfying. It's like you said, it's just very few actual actions on the board. There's gain resources or build a tile, get more people, or get some special resource for another tile that you buy. It's very simple actions, not that many of them.
Mhm.
It's not that intimidating. I mean, it is, but it's not on BGA at least.
It's still going to be a thinkier, a little bit longer game for sure. But yeah, I definitely after playing it, I'm like, yeah, this one's not as intimidating as I thought it would probably be. And I think some of the mistakes, especially that kind of befell you, I think I really lucked out by getting the faction that I ended up getting. We just kind of picked randomly, uh,
Yeah.
since we didn't. I mean, we weren't 100% sure which ones are going to be better than others. And I think for a first game, the one that I got giving me those kind of two
Oh,
extra workers to
yeah. For
use
a
every
first
round, I
game,
think was
that's really nice.
probably about the best one I could have gotten. I think I don't obviously didn't see all of them, but I would think that's probably one of the better ones to get for a first game.
Yeah, I feel like
And
that's like Scythe, where you can repeat the same action. Just a really good one for a beginner.
yeah,
Yeah, I was a little jealous.
but I think with on a second play, I think you would probably do a little bit better knowing some of the things that you know
Yes.
after that first game. There were just a couple of things that, yeah, once that hit, I think that was what really hurt your game. Just because we
Um,
kind of said, We'll read that afterwards. And then I just happened to kind of meet my conditions a little bit better
Oh,
on
yeah,
mine, and
yeah,
you were struggling to get to yours because at that point in the game it was tough. And
yeah. I needed to get 2 more
yeah,
tiles played. I needed to clear out an anomaly, which yours needed anomalies. You could just have a bunch of paradoxes and whatever, and I had to go get rid of one and then buy 2 blue tiles in like the last 3 rounds where I only have 2 workers apiece. Um, Luckily, I had a lot of water, so I could trade for some special
true.
resources to get more workers. And it was actually nice because it simplified, so I had just the right amount of workers to do what I wanted. But yeah, I also like just kind of the dual workers on the board, as well as you can just use the individual workers not in a suit going to those
Oh, okay.
boards, but also on the tableau that you're building, and activate different actions there. I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, I like that.
Cycling the workers once they get tired when they're used. You can pay water to move them over and not get a bad reputation, which gives you bad points. Or you can just say, wake up, you're working again. And then it kind of gets you a negative victory points for the end of the game, or possibly lose your workers. That's the route that I went, but I ended up getting a special benefit to that negated any negative victory points or losses from that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I like it for what it is. It's like a pretty meaty game. It's probably like, I don't prefer those, so if I'm ranking it in those, probably like an 8 to a 9. But just base general, I might still give this an 8. I
Yeah,
did like it
nice.
quite a bit. I'm just, as
Yeah,
I'm talking about it, thinking about it, I'm like I almost kind of want to play it again. I
yeah.
don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah, now that we're
Believe.
talking about it, I do actually want to try it again. And like I said, with the faction I got, I might have had a little better experience than you did with it and what I would maybe normally get if I played this again. Um, but I'm thinking this one was like an 8.7 to 9 or 8.75 to 9 for me. I really, really liked this game a lot. And yeah, the fact that it was kind of simpler and then kind of that end game where it either ends after 7 rounds or there's your normal action tiles that you've been taking now have these tiles or action spots on the board now have tiles on them and they have like one time or a benefit that makes the action a little bit better. And once all 6 of those are used, the game could just end then. So it could potentially end before the end of that. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know that I've seen that in games. That's
Yeah.
not how ours ended, but it was just an interesting thing of, I it'd be interesting to see how that comes into play in other
Oh,
games. Like if you intentionally try to end it to maybe screw someone over or something. I
yeah.
don't know. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out in future games.
So the time travel of the game, just quickly, did that feel as cool as you think it should? The getting resources, which I like, you just get the resources, but then later on, you're supposed to go and pay
Pay
off
them back.
fast.
I I thought it worked. I thought it worked pretty well. It was, I mean, it is just essentially having a debt out there that you just have to owe, or else you just take. It's kind of like having you could have just been given like a card of like, well, you pay this back sometime during the game, or you just lose 2 points.
Yeah.
Kind of makes me think of the Architect series where you get some of those, or maybe it
Mhm.
was an Architect, but Paladins, where you get like the negative things,
Yeah.
where if you don't flip them over, they're worth negative, but if you do flip them over, they're worth something. Um, I think that actually worked a lot. I think that was the part that I was really intimidated by, scared, like, oh gosh, how's this going to work when you're
Yeah.
going back
Yeah.
in time? And I thought that worked really
Yeah. It's nice
pretty
because
smoothly.
when you do it, I didn't. I got some free removals from it with my best move of the game, sneaking a tile that removed 3 of mine. But actually going back and doing it does move you along a track to gain you victory points
Mhm.
as well. So it is kind of double, and you get the tile back. So it's like 3 benefits in one.
Yeah,
So
that was the thing that I didn't realize when I was doing the I think it was a tutorial and stuff, is that you'd get that back. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of a cool thing where yeah, you pay it back, otherwise you're gonna lose something, but yeah, you end up getting points. And so part of
yeah,
you does want to put some out there so
yeah,
that you can get points and go back and do that.
You could, yeah,
It's
you
such a
could do it.
weird thing.
You could just get it to then just give it back the next round.
Right.
It's
Granted, you do
cool.
have to take an action to go back in time,
Yeah,
but yes, you could
yeah,
do that. Pretty
yeah,
cool.
yeah. And then lastly, Micro Midgard. We just played this one. This is most recently, and I brought it to an even 10, which made this very, very enticing to do this list of games because 10 is an awesome number.
Yes, it is. And this one was one we wanted to take a look at to possibly do a try before you buy. You can check out that series where we play some of these games on Board Game Arena and see how the implementation works out. I don't think we've done any for the ones that we've listed, obviously playing them one time, but
Yep.
we could go to them. So if you're interested in seeing us kind of go through this and the implementation, talk about that a little bit, let us know in the comments below which one of these you'd like to see. But we were possibly going to do one on this one since it's currently on Kickstarter, I believe, or GameFound, and um, we thought let's play this one and see if it's worth doing a video on. And this is from the same company that did Micro Dojo, which is also on Board Game Arena, which we've played, and I feel like they share some DNA. If you have played Micro Dojo, I think you'll feel some similarities in these.
Yeah, it feels like it. It's just like a handful of resources you're building up and gathering, race to a certain amount of points, and just like, yeah, trading resources in the limited resource amount
Yeah.
shared between the players and the maximum that you can have. That is definitely similar in kind of the moving around the board, options being opened up and then not opened up, having to wait for kind of workers to cool down to use them. A lot of very similar things. While it's not like the 3x3 grid or whatever that was, it is kind of this ring, which is it's interesting. I mean, I like it, kind of the moving, and throughout the game, parts get flipped and removed, and their benefits
Ragnarok.
are worsened slightly, and it really gets tight at the end.
It does. It starts to get tight as to what you can do. You're trying to potentially end the game because when those Ragnarok things happen, there's these tokens you can see on the top. They're kind of like this sun wolf looking thing, and on the bottom they're more of like the icy moon looking one. And there'll be little tokens that are going around, and once they would hit that opposite color, that causes a Ragnarok, and then there's a scoring that happens, either depending on which one it is, it's either the top or the bottom there of that one.
Yep.
And whoever meets that condition best will get the point or 2 points or 3 points from the last one. So by the end, it gets to be a large chunk of points because you're racing to 9.
Yep.
But yeah, then you flip it over and then you're skipping those ones, and but then there's less options to actually get that to move. So it's kind of an interesting puzzle. It can, like I think our game got to, it can get to a point where you kind of know you're going to lose. Like you don't really have a good way of doing it. You can make some clever choices here to try to maybe block them from doing something by taking one of the ones that can move and putting it in a certain spot, possibly blocking them in. But there is also a kind of a limited thing you can actually stop people from doing.
Yeah, it did feel like that at the end. Although maybe it's better if you don't just throw away a turn like I did.
That's true.
So that definitely, I think that's set me back. I think you're on a good course there, but I think that definitely put enough separation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like it. Yeah, so the different actions on the board kind of move you up these tracks. Sometimes 2 of the tracks are like hammer tracks, and you can get tiles that you can then have in your personal supply that you can activate once per turn. I like that, adding a little custom kind of action that only you can do. But then under those tiles is revealed just a base action. And usually the higher up you get, the better action it will be, eventually even getting victory points. I like that, moving up the tracks, but like I said, just kind of as the board gets limited, it's just more and more, how am I ever going to get to the top of that track? What is there even to do here?
To get up those tracks, yeah.
It's going to take so many turns.
Right, especially when the spaces are limited, and then if the other person does take that action, well, now you're going to have to wait at least 2 turns before that's going to be unlocked,
Mm.
because there might not be a secondary version of that action. But then I suppose you could maybe go to Midgard potentially. I do like that that is an option, can sometimes help you a little bit. But yeah, it does definitely get tight towards the end. And it looks like there's 2 different versions, so you can get this bigger version.
Yes.
The other one fits in that smaller box, so you can kind of tell. What the heck was that?
There's the
A rock.
Ragnarok edition. Ragnarok.
Uh, so yeah, if you're watching this recently and this one looks interesting to you, definitely go try this one on Board Game Arena or check out the campaign. It's still currently running. But yeah, I would probably this one. I think I like this one better than Micro Dojo, but I would say both of them kind of had that similar thing of
Mm.
potentially have a person get ahead, and it's kind of a little bit difficult to come back. But because of those point things increasing as you go, it does give you an opportunity to come back if you
Yeah.
can do
Yeah,
that. But it can be difficult to force one, like we said, because the actions are so limited at the end as well.
yeah, yeah, I would probably give this. I'd maybe give this
Oh,
a
I guess.
7. I think.
Oh, yeah. I
7
guess I didn't
for
really
me.
say a score. I'd probably give it like maybe a 6.5.
Yeah, yeah.
Not opposed to trying it again, but it did just get to feel quite tight towards the end, and not necessarily like sometimes that's in a good way. I like the tightness, but this one, yeah, you couldn't really get up the
Yeah.
tracks that you might want to.
You
You couldn't really,
can't
so it was
block
just a
your
little tough.
opponent. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But it's worth checking out. I'm sure there are people that are going to like it. It's going to be a micro-sized game, so you're not going to take up a bunch of room unless you buy the Ragnarok edition, of course. Then
Yeah,
it's probably going to be tickets ride size box. It looks like.
yeah.
But yeah, those are the 10 games that we played over this last weekend.
Yeah. What are
So,
your
overall pretty
favorites?
good. What's
Comment
my
below.
favorite?
Or I was telling the audience, comment below
Oh,
your favorites of these 10 games, or Alhambra and that other one as well, if you want to throw those in.
that's true. Let us know.
Yeah. But I guess if
All
you
right.
had a favorite, you can name a favorite. I'd probably go Sobek, maybe.
Yeah, I'd say Anachrony or Sobek for 2 totally different experiences. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I really liked both of those quite a bit. But overall, I mean, most of these I'd probably play again, I think.
Would you add them to the collection?
Anachrony, I'm a little tempted. Sobek, 2
Yeah.
players, I'm also a little tempted, just because it probably would be a good one. Maybe I'll play it on here with Michaela once and see if she
Yeah.
likes it. If she liked it, then it would be better to get it, since it is only 2 players.
You can
Because
just
then if
bring
she
along
doesn't
your
like it,
yeah. And just be like, oh, can you play a couple games with me here, Mac? And just show her Sobek, and then we'll play another one.
we'll play another one kind of similar.
Yeah, very similar.
But yeah, like you said, let us know in the comments below which one of these are your guys' favorites, or if there's any on Board Game Arena or however you might have experienced. What did you play this weekend? Any new to you games you've played recently that you've really been loving? Let us know. We'd love to hear it. If you want to see more videos like this, let us know in the comments below. We don't. This is probably a little odd weekend out. It's been probably a while since we've played a bunch of new games.
Yeah.
Definitely 10. That's quite a few. But we could maybe do something like this for like a month or something if we played them.
Yeah.
Like this is probably closer to how many new games we'd play in a month versus a weekend, but
Yes.
just a little bit different, and most of them are pretty approachable, on the quicker side. So
Yeah.
Yeah. But otherwise, we hope to see you on our future videos. And as always, don't forget to keep on nibbling on our content.